which is called Why Does Teamwork in the Classroom Have to be Taboo? And our speaker is Dawn Cable. Once a high school English teacher at Federal Hocking High School in Stewart, Ohio, Dawn has been teaching remedial English and reading courses at EGCC since 2006. She earned her BS in Comprehensive Communications Education in 2000 from Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. Currently, she is close to completion of her reading endorsement and master's degree in Education Administration from Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio. She is both program chair and adjunct faculty for the Developmental English Program at Eastern Gateway Community College and was the lead faculty during a curriculum redesign that integrated 4 reading and writing courses into 2 courses. In her presentation, she will address the contradiction between what we say we want our students to be able to do and what we actually ask them to do, specifically in regards to our approach to teamwork in and out of the classroom. Okay, Dawn, I'm going to turn it over to you. Are you ready to get started?
I believe that I am.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that introduction.
No problem.
I'm very happy to be here this afternoon to definitely talk about one of my teaching passions, and that is the method of cooperative learning. I definitely just have 2 goals. Let's see here. That I would be definitely happy if you walked away today at the end saying, hey, I like this, I think I can do it, or if you say I like it and I think it would certainly work for a particular unit or for maybe a particular colleague. And at the very least, if you walk away today thinking and maybe talking about the power that you have in the classroom over student success based on your teaching methods, then I'll feel that I accomplished something with you today. So we're going to spend this time talking about cooperative learning, and by that I think it's really important to focus on where we see cooperative learning in our day-to-day life. I think we have pretty high standards of the professionals who serve us, particularly in the medical world. If we have a difficult health issue, the diagnostic process and the treatment process is usually left to a team of doctors who have multiple specializations and work together to give you the care that you want. Even if I'm a patient and I'm in the hospital and I'm there to receive an IV, I know as a patient, if the person that's trying to administer the IV is struggling, the last thing I want the person to do is not go get help. You know, I don't want to keep getting poked by the IV and it not work. And if you're a parent, you know that in the education world, the last thing you want your teacher to do is not count you in the process of the education of your child. You don't want the teacher to not take what you know and to take what you think into consideration when trying to give your child the best education that he or she deserves. Even in criminal cases, there are teams of people who work to solve a particular case. And on the lighter side of life, team sports is all about teamwork. Even athletes who have specialty areas know the entire game, but they might specialize in a particular area. I think my favorite, more down-to-earth, real-world application of cooperative learning is the ever-present quest for weight loss. And on the television series, The Biggest Loser, I think we tune in, if you're familiar with it, and we watch these people who come from all walks of life become part of a team, to become part of a support group, and they have a common goal to lose weight with the help of Bob or Jillian and the other trainers, and we see them totally lose the weight that they're set to do, and that's individualized. That's not necessarily based on the team, it's based on that individual's effort. So while cooperation is the norm in our everyday life, I think when we get into the traditional classroom, there is somewhat of a contradiction, because in the classroom we're often hearing, do your own work. It's up to you, do your own work. And I understand that projects that are group projects or group work might filter into the semester, but for this presentation I really want to distinguish that I see a difference between group work and cooperative learning. In other words, to me, cooperative learning is defined by having a cooperative task where people work together to find a solution to a problem, or where people work together to reach a goal. And I view group work as maybe having an overall goal to reach, but the work is usually divided up. And even though in group work sometimes there is an individual assessment, usually there is a group assessment, which is not always fair. So in the traditional classroom, going back to that, it's the top-down approach. And there may be time and place in every classroom for traditional teaching. I'm not trying to say that there is not. However, this philosophy really does adopt the sink or swim attitude. This philosophy really does look at the teacher as the expert and the student as the blank slate, and you need to open up their brain and fill it up with all the information and hope it sticks. So I don't know that the traditional philosophy of the top-down approach really embraces the notion of working and learning so that every student achieves. And as instructors, I know your goal is that all of your students find success and achieve. The bottom line is isolation doesn't work for anyone. It doesn't work for us as instructors. It most certainly doesn't work for doctors, and it doesn't work for our students. I come from the community college background, and we have students who already have so many obstacles that if the classroom itself is an obstacle, the chance of your students finding success or even retaining them to the end of the semester, it's very low. So let's go back to the Biggest Loser perspective, and instead of it being a top-down approach, what you have is everyone working together to accomplish the clearly defined target or goal. In the Biggest Loser TV show, it's weight loss. We see these amazing accomplishments week after week when they weigh in, and those weigh-ins are individualized. But I ask myself, would the TV show be the same if the contestants were out for him or herself from the very beginning? If there were no teams in The Biggest Loser, would it be the same? Or what if Jillian, the trainer, sat all of the contestants into a classroom and lectured to them on what they should be doing in the weight room or what they should be doing in the kitchen, and then asked them to leave the classroom and go do it? Now go show me that you know you can do this. And leave them in isolation to do so. Logic tells me that we would not see the same results. Logic tells me that it's this cooperative framework of The Biggest Loser working together that allows these contestants to accomplish a difficult task. So if it works for weight loss, could this framework also work in the classroom? If you start by clearly defining the target, it might be a weekly learning goal, it might be a topic learning goal, and then you work together in a team. Although you have assistance from a trainer, from a coach, from a facilitator, the instructor, could the weigh-in at the end of the week or at the end of the unit show higher results? And that would be the individualized assessment. So today these are our workshop objectives. I want you to think about where your students might be stumbling, and then ask yourself if cooperative learning could be a solution to any of those stumbling blocks. Because if it is, I want you to walk away understanding a few different ways that you could implement cooperative learning. I feel it's important to give you just a little bit of context for where I'm coming from, why I myself even started to use cooperative learning, and why I had passion for it. I'm like one of the weight loss contestants that makes it all the way to the end and realized it worked, it worked. And that's who I am as far as the teacher that did not use cooperative learning before and then learned it, implemented it, and had this huge aha moment and realized it was the missing link. So I start here with number one. When we were charged with the redesign task, we started to look at our data as a whole, and not just my classes, but the whole department in all of our classes, and the bottom line was that our pass rates were extremely too low. And by too low, I mean 45% of our students were passing, 55% of our students were passing. There was not one semester in the 5-year period we looked where we had more than 75% of our students passing. So when we asked ourselves why was this occurring, I believe every instructor felt attendance was a huge link between success or not success. So we wanted to not just address our curriculum when we redesigned, we also wanted to address our policies. It wasn't enough just to decide what is it that our students really need to be able to do and know. It was also important to decide what can we put in place to help them be able to do and know what it is we feel is important. So number 4, the first thing we decided on after a lot of research was to add My Writing Lab to our course. And we used the Mosaics textbook. There's 2 levels, reading and writing paragraphs and reading and writing essays. My Writing Lab is attached to each, and we added that as a way to help us standardize our classes. And by standardize, I don't mean canned. In other words, we don't necessarily follow the same course calendar, but we absolutely do use the same assessments, and we absolutely do cover the same topics. So not only did we add My Writing Lab, we decided that My Writing Lab would only be completed in class. The reason for that is plentiful. As community college students, there's not equal opportunity for resources. Geography, economics, etc. They don't always have internet access. They don't always have computers, for that matter. So we can't add this technology to our course and then not provide the place and time for them to complete the course curriculum. So the My Writing Lab is only completed in class, and then it was, let's just see what would happen. Our driving question was, would this help improve attendance and thus success? And what I realized was that the My Writing Lab became the missing link to utilize the teaching strategies that I don't know, I've been taught to do, and to utilize them in an artful and scientific way. When we blended the curriculum with technology, added cooperative learning to it, our pass rates went through the roof. So you've got to remember that as we have standards and objectives that we ask our students to know, that we want them to be able to master and retain, we also have to ask ourselves as instructors, do we make instructional decisions based on the data in regards to our teaching methods? And if we did, what would happen in our classroom? The data here in this pyramid shows you that if you are traditionally mostly lecturing in your class, you've got a 5% chance of your students retaining that information, versus if you're asking your students to work with one another, to practice by doing and teach one another and help one another, 90% of that information is going to be retained. You go back to The Biggest Loser and you think about Jillian in a lecture hall, or you think about Jillian helping others by teaching themselves and working with one another. They have more weight loss because of the group work, the group effort, than if they were just to read a book about weight loss and then go try to do it. So there's an actual method that we use called the STAD method. I was taught this method informally by the dean in our medical program. STAD stands for Student Teams Achievement Divisions, and there's actual structure to this cooperative learning approach, and it's a framework, so there is science to it that I think students need. They need to know what to expect, but there's also an intense need for the teacher to be able to artfully be communicating, to be able to artfully be making decisions on the fly, and I believe that that truly helps our students see both the science and the art of whatever the lesson is. So when you start by assigning groups, and I'm going to talk about this throughout the rest of the presentation. I want to start by saying this. Don't ability group your students. That's the worst thing that you can do. If you actually try to cooperatively lead your students into forming their own groups, that's the best case scenario. For example, I don't implement a true STAD method cooperative learning classroom until about week 5 or 6 of the semester. What I do weeks 1 through 4, weeks 1 through 5, is informally give them opportunities to work with one another so that I could sit back and observe. I want to see how they're working. I want to model for them what they can do when they are working with someone. And this is easy. Just by giving them a task to accomplish. I might ask them to sit in class and practice fragments, for instance, and to work on their own. And then I'll say, okay, now I want you to sit with 2 or 3 of your classmates to compare answers, talk about your answers until you reach a consensus. And it's through that discussion that they're starting to get used to relying on each other and realizing that, hey, I might know this, and I know that I know it because I'm helping them learn it because I know student B had the wrong answer. I know I'm right on this one. So, and it works both ways. So as long as you're providing guidelines and as long as your task has parameters, you know, you're clearly telling the students what it is you expect and what it is you want them to do, the group work, the group learning really kind of takes shape on its own. Students talk the same language. You know, I don't care how similar you are to your student. To them, you're the teacher. You are different. For the longest time, maybe by the end of the semester they don't feel that way, but they do for the longest time. But with one another, they feel at least a little bit equal. Once they have accomplished working on this task together or practicing together, their assessment at the end is individualized. They all work on it separately. Just like in The Biggest Loser, the weekly weigh-in, each person is up on that scale by him or herself. There is no other person there holding their hand. So the assessments are individualized, but the missing link in a traditional classroom, you assess, you grade, you pass back, you move on. But in a cooperative classroom, you assess, and those results are shared to some capacity, just like the weigh-in on The Biggest Loser. You need to see where your classmates are or your teammates are so that you can reflect as a team, so that you can continue to build together as a team and help one another with your strengths and weaknesses. So the next slide, this table is hypothetical. The science for the STAD method of cooperative learning is very much the same science as how the game of The Biggest Loser works. In The Biggest Loser, it's the percentage of total weight loss. The group that has the highest total percentage of weight loss, quote unquote, wins. You know, they're the winners for the week. With the STAD method, the percentage of group members improving the score from week to week earns a point, or they can help the team out. So the group that has the highest total percentage of improvement wins. And when I say win, there can be competition, therefore prizes, added to this method. And it's great because with my writing lab, it amazes me because as much as I want to think that my students want to work for money or for food, they want to work for those icons in my writing lab. They want all of the stars to be showing up on their study plan. In this hypothetical example, if you have this team with 5 students, which by the way would be a very large team, I would never suggest that you make a team larger than 5. In week 5, cooperative learning maybe wasn't necessarily implemented just yet, but it's the control score. You just wanted to see where they are learning the traditional way. And I love this class. They're all doing great, 90, 95, 80, 87, 75. Everybody passed. I consider that as an instructor a total win. But in week 6, If I then formally introduce to them that we're going to now be cooperatively learning in teams, and here are the rules, and here are your goals, and these will be your rewards if you do well, what happens to the scores? 3 students improve. 1 student stays the same, and 1 student slept off a little but still passed, which means 3 out of 5 students made gains, and because you have to go on the total percentage of gains, just like in The Biggest Loser, I divide that and would decide that that team earns 0.6 points. In the end, when we implemented this to be the first semester, our points did add up, and we did have prize packages that I'll be happy to share with you if you're interested. But we go back to the framework. With my writing lab, we had the standardized environment. I feel it's important to review this before I really show you the results of my own class. My writing lab provides access to lots of learning materials, as well as to one another, as well as to me. But with my writing lab, the pressure was taken away from me to be creating all of these assessments, and quite frankly, to be grading all of these assessments, and actually provided me the time that I need as a teacher to be able to reflect on their progress or lack of progress and redirect based on what I've observed. So as long as I'm continuously reflecting and observing their work, I can continuously communicate and create the weekly learning goals that I'm asking the teams to reach. My writing lab also allows me, with the shared resources, for me to post all of these weekly learning goals. So if they do happen to be absent, they still have access. They don't have to flip out right away if they're absent. And we allow our students at Eastern Gateway to have 2 chances for every single assessment that they complete in my writing lab. I believe that as developmental students, they come to us typically with a history of failure, and if we don't change that history now, then the chances of them staying at the community college and earning the degree, again, decrease. So K through 12, it's typical, it's traditional, that they might only have 1 chance to take the test, and that's their grade, and now we're moving on. But now when we're saying, look, you could take this test, but if you don't do well, you have another chance to study, to get help with me, and to take it again, I think they really do appreciate having the opportunity to truly take control of their grade. They feel more empowered of their learning because they have those second chances, if you will. It's another safety net. And while we do say that my writing lab work can only take place in class, it was important for us to have yet another safety net for what happens when a student is absent. If we're not trying to punish a group, again, it goes back to our policies. So during our redesign, we took our old tutoring center and totally rebranded it. And our Student Success Center, where we have 4 days of nonstop tutoring taking place, we rebranded it to almost be an extension of our class. All of our tutors were trained in my writing lab. All of our tutors teach using my writing lab. And they knew that if they ran out of time, or if they missed class, or if they really wanted to work ahead or work harder, they could always do so in the tutoring center because we considered that to be a proctored space. So essentially, our classroom was always buzzing and moving forward. And because they saw the progress, they were motivated to attend. This is my sample study of the very first semester that I implemented cooperative learning using the STAD method in the fall of 2011. Now, there's only 7 students here, so this clearly isn't my entire class, but it shows you 2 groups. And I choose to show you this particular class because of a great story. Group A, student 1, 2, and 3, were 3 boys. 1 was non-traditional, 2 were right out of high school, but they were pretty similar in age, and they were pretty ornery. And before week 7, they were actually a group of 4 students. There was a 4th boy originally in that group who was pretty with it. He was always prepared. He was very intelligent. Quite frankly, he probably could have taught himself most of the course, and those other 3 boys knew it, and they didn't necessarily come too prepared because they rode on his coattails. So when I took the control score, week 6, you see 82, 82, and 90. Student 4 out of Group B was the original 4th student in Group A's team. He scored an 87. And after that week, I took him from the group and put him in Group B, which was 3 girls. In Group B, there were 3 girls who were very highly motivated. They were all moms. They were there for the right reasons. They were ready to go. And I needed the boys in Group A to understand that they couldn't ride on the coattails of the boy always coming prepared. And I knew if I removed him, the other 3 would soon realize that they were capable if they just tried. And the great success story out of this class is that if you go week to week to week, you actually see that Group A has the higher group GPA by the end of the semester, and they were a group who really felt they were totally going to fail the class now because I took the smart kid out of the group. And I think it's a testament that when you empower them and when you believe in them, and it goes back to what DJ Henry was speaking about, when you're enthusiastic and you believe in them, they start to believe in themselves. So we keep track of these team points throughout the rest of the semester. They definitely always want to know, where does my team stand? So this is a table that I keep going, and they have access to it. They could ask me at any point how people are doing. But something else that I kept track of for the very first time was more specifically when a student missed a class, what did that do to the student's grade? For Group A, there were, out of these 27 class sessions, 3 students, there are 27 total class sessions, there were only 3 absences out of 3 students. So they attended 88% of the time. Ironically, even though Group B also had 4 students, the same thing, there were only 4 absences out of 36 total class sessions for, again, an 88% of attendance. And if you look at the group GPAs, if you look at the individual GPAs, first of all, my pass rate was 100% in this class for the very first time ever. Second of all, in this sample, Group A and B, everybody passed with an A or B. And it's not just that they passed, they really knew what they were doing. I had great confidence that they were retaining the information from week to week to week. So this itself was the writing on the wall that it's working. There are multiple other reasons why we should bother even considering what teaching methods we utilize, and it's because it's appealing. These are our 21st century skills. You go back to the real world applications of cooperation, and we expect it in our marriage. We expect it at our own workplace. We expect cooperation because it works, it appeals to us, and everybody does better. So even though before cooperative learning is formally introduced in my class, students were doing well, after I implement cooperative learning, students only do better. And students most certainly are more satisfied in the learning. I would definitely, go to the grave saying they know more and they retain it longer because they helped learn it from one another. They were empowered, they were in control of their scores, in control of their grade, and they wanted to come to class because they were counted on. It wasn't just that I wanted them to be there. They had a group that wanted them to be there. So another great thing that I believe is important with the STAD method is that every member of the group has equal role in the group. We don't divide up roles. Everybody is responsible for learning it all but the assessment at the end would be up to the individual. So the group was never punished, like group work or a group grade. There's competitive spirit in there, and because of that, they really do start to see the bigger picture on learning and not on grading. I don't know about you, but I know that when I was a college student, some of the courses that I got a C in, I most certainly learned a whole lot more than other courses in which I may have earned an A. I do believe, if you think about The Biggest Loser again here, weight loss is probably higher and continues to stay off if you're in a group environment than if you were just trying to do it on your own. But there are definitely challenges. First of all, cooperative learning is not for everyone. The teacher trying to utilize cooperative learning must be a teacher who can kind of give up some sense of needing to control the classroom, to have that top-down approach. It's also extremely important to communicate so clearly and so frequently everything that the student needs in order to succeed. And that starts with the objectives and the purpose of the lesson, but also the objectives and the purpose of why they're doing so in a group. It's important to allow the students to give you feedback. If you start to feel they're struggling or they're not enjoying, you need to make adjustments. So cooperative learning is very flexible. I know that one semester I let a group just totally collapse, but the rest of the class was into it. They were totally into it. They wanted to stay in the groups. Eventually, the group that I let collapse actually drifted back together. And I think by just not forcing it and letting it collapse and then letting them move forward, they themselves realized, hey, wait, maybe this wasn't such a bad thing after all. I think that I do want to utilize my classmates more. So I think we need to be sure we are treating our students as, adults who know a lot and sometimes just need to prove it to themselves, something that we might already know about them. So if the students aren't achieving the goals that you're intending, please consider just revisiting your approach. One student can't do all the work, shouldn't do all the work, won't do all the work. It won't work that way, which is another reason why you've got to be able to consider the way that you group people. And I let my students choose their own groups. They just kind of migrate to one another, and I observe them that way for a while. And with the exception of the story that I told you about the boys, their choices usually are the best choices. And I want to empower them and believe in them that they can do, that they can make proper decisions that way. I feel that the best way to learn, especially something like this, because it's very flexible, I could go into lots of examples, but I'm really more interested in your specific questions because I don't want to necessarily provide all the information that you could find yourself if you were just to Google cooperative learning. I really would like to have some open dialogue about this. So whether we're talking about weight loss and overall health or whether we're talking about student achievement, I do believe that cooperative learning is extremely powerful. Now for me, my writing lab was the missing link. I felt I was already a pretty energetic, creative, hands-on teacher, but I didn't have the framework to implement cooperative learning in this way until I had my writing lab in place. So it doesn't just work for me. It did work for the students, and I like the cheesy phrase that team is a great way of saying together everyone achieves more. And I'm just really going to open it up to questions so that we can maybe have a dialogue.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dawn. We do have a question from Sarah at El Camino College who wants to know, how do you limit the use of my writing lab in class? Don't students have access from any computer?
Okay, that's a good question. I did not answer that when I was presenting. My writing lab has a few features on it, lots of bells and whistles that help us limit it to them only using it in class. Number one, with the assign dates and due dates, we use that as a way to hide things and show things. We show it when we want them to be working on it. We hide it when we don't want them to be working on it. That's one method. Another method is, quite frankly, observation. If we're working today on fragments and I've got 3 people absent, but magically 3 people who are absent have it done somehow, then that's a conversation I have with those students. And really, the honesty is the best policy because that's the kind of class I run. They really don't work on it from home if they know I'm going to catch them. And I don't mean catch them in a policing sort of way, but they know I'm going to notice. Secondly, we also have a paper trail that we have set up between the Student Success Center, which is where we have tutors, and our classroom. And if a student was absent, I will fill out a form, essentially, that lists the activities that the student needs to catch up on. They'll take it to the tutoring center, and the tutor will say, okay, let me know if you need any help. Feel free to work on it. And then the tutor will sign off that, yes, they were in that success center working on it, and we consider that to be a proctored area for working.
Okay, great. We have a couple of more questions. This one is from Mark, and he wants to know if you could share the prize packages that you provided to students. I know you mentioned that earlier.
Okay, thanks for reminding me. The first semester, the prize packages were pretty meaty. So I'm going to tell you what they were, but I'll tell you that we don't use the same packages now. The very first semester, because we were really just trying to see if it worked, our president actually gave us money out of her wallet. So the winning team, which meant they had the most gains throughout the semester and the highest GPAs, they would split $500 and they would get out of taking the final exam. And everybody really wanted the exam to be omitted rather than the money, which allowed me to then reassess throughout the semester, and I changed the prize package to also include if you were in second place or third place and your overall GPA as an individual was an A, I would let that individual not take the final exam. And I had that okayed with my president of the college, actually, because she and I sat down and we discussed this, and we thought that if they're working so hard to kind of rewrite their history, meaning come from a history of failure into success, and they work so hard to do that, why not just give them the break of not taking the final exam? They've mastered it throughout the semester, and that really drives a lot of our students. Currently, my prize packages still remain to be getting out of the final exam. The winning group does not have to take the final as long as every member of the group has an A or B overall GPA. If a member of the group has a C, that C student has to take the final. And I talk about that in the classroom as their last chance workout, where it's their last chance to prove that they do know it. Maybe they just had an off day or an off few days, or they got really sick in the semester, and here's your way to make up for it. So I think it's the way that I talk to students a lot about their grades that make them not flip out about their grades so much if they are low. So if they have a C, they must, or lower, they must take the final exam, and we talk about it being their last chance workout. And typically those are the prize packages. It's getting out of the final exam, and it's based on grades.
Okay, all right, wonderful. The last question that we have here is from Leanne, who said, you mentioned you use my writing lab in the classroom. Do you have students work on activities in groups or pairs when you do this, or is that just how they're individually assessed? The tests in my writing lab are how they're individually assessed, as well as their essays. We consider that to be an individual assessment. But the recall, the apply, that sort of stuff, those are some of the activities that we do in class that they work together on. The great beauty of my writing lab is just because we're a group of 4, if we all pull up the recall
assessment for combining sentences, it doesn't mean that we're all four going to get the same set of questions. So by being able to talk about the questions as they pop up, they are actually teaching one another the tricks and trades not only of the technology and the reading skills of carefully eliminating answers, but they're reinforcing why they know A to be the answer, or whatever the case may be. So if it's considered to be homework in my writing lab, they can work on that together in class, as well as other activities that I assign or that I create, they work on in class. And then if anything's considered to be a test in my writing lab, that's what they're working on individually.
Okay. All right, then I guess that about does it. If anybody else has any questions about this presentation, please just send it through the questions box, and we'll contact Dawn afterwards, and she'll get back to you. Dawn, thank you so much for your presentation. It was great having you speak for us.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.